I believe that if we are honest with ourselves, that the most fascinating problem in the world is who am I? What do you mean? What do you feel when you say the word I? I, myself.
I wanna fly the train! I don't give a fuck! Oh, jeez. Hey, what's going on, man?
¿Qué piensas en esta forma? Ahorita no think es what you're thinking of.
Oh, jeez. Hey, what's going on? I don't give a fuck! Oh, jeez. Hey, what's going on, man? You can't get out of it! Oh, jeez. Stop joining your friends, you weirdo!
I think that I am familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this particular problem until it swings up and bites you on the ass.
Psych, just kidding. My new catchphrase is, I don't give a fuck!
It's asking a lot to believe that the problem is going to fix itself.
Guess what, bitch?
Our technology and our numbers have both reached a state where inadvertently we can pose a danger to the global environment, especially through the atmosphere.
The whales have a 15-foot penis. Are you a pervert or something? Okay.
Now, nobody pretends we understand everything about the global climate.
I didn't cut out. You heard me. Google it yourself.
There are feedbacks, some of which you warm the Earth a little bit, and the tendency will be to further increase the temperature, so-called positive feedback.
What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. I don't give a
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? So tonight I have Otangelo on, and we are discussing basically both of our worldviews.
It's super loud, but I can't hear anything.
Oh, well, I mean, you can't hear anything from me, honey. You'll only be able to hear him.
Oh.
Okay. Everybody's saying that I'm super low.
Like loud, like very, very loud, like hurting people's ears.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Here we go. I forgot that I have to tone my stuff down on the stream. I'm not hurting your ears, am I, Otangelo?
Yes. Can you hear me? Is everything fine?
Oh, yes. I can hear you. I'm not hurting your ears, though, am I?
No. It's okay. Your level is fine for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
People are saying, well, now that you've made everybody deaf. So tonight I have Otangelo on. We're going to be discussing both of our worldviews. Mythicism is probably going to come up a little bit, but mainly what we're looking at is just, being able, seeing which one makes more sense, either a more atheistic type of worldview or a Christian worldview. Now, I do want to say that I don't think that atheism necessarily has a worldview all on its own. I think that it can be one facet of a worldview. So this is not going to be representative of like all atheists or anything like that. This is just my own personal worldview that we're discussing here tonight. And so before we begin, though, before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know that if you liked that song, leading into the show tonight, you can find a link in the description to download it. It's free. It's from Mindwave. I'm working with Mindwave on putting some songs together, so some more stuff to put here on the channel, more music-y kind of thing with a very Godless engineer sort of theme to them. So be prepared for that. If you guys still want to help out Daniel M., one of our community members, or one of our family members here, his link is still in the description if you would like to help Daniel out. That would be awesome. Also, if you want to check out any of the links in the description, please do so. So, now that we kind of got all that boilerplate stuff out of the way, I did promise Otangelo that he could take 10 minutes to introduce himself and sort of start the conversation off. So, Otangelo, if you want to introduce yourself and then go right into whatever prepared statement you might have.
Yeah, I think many of your audience know me. I have called several times to the Atheist Experience to talk heathens, and I am active in having debates with atheists, and it is my focus to elucidate origin of life. My focus with atheists is not starting with the issue if Christianity is true, but through a cumulative argument where we start with the dichotomy. There is either a worldview where there is a God or a worldview where there is not a God. And my proposition is that we can best explain our existence through the action of an intelligent designer, an eternal creator, which made everything which is physical, which exists. We exist because of him. And one of the very important topics which is very actual today is in regards of the origin of life, in regards of information. I know you, John, that you had a debate recently with John Maddox in regards of that topic. And I would like to read some things in regards of my understanding, and I think that the information stored in DNA and communication systems in life, in cells, is a very, very strong evidence that a creator was involved in creating life. So I will read my my text here. 3 things are essential to have life: the basic building blocks of life, energy, and information. Cells use the most advanced computer information system known. To have an information transmission system, following is required. First, the rules of any communication system must be established in advance through establishing in common agreement of the meaning of words, signs, or a code. There must be pre-established agreement between those that communicate with each other. Otherwise, the transmission of information is not possible. A message can only be created once a language has been established. A code is an abstract, immaterial, non-physical set of rules. Secondly, this set of rule, code, or language permits to produce a blueprint, which is instructional complex information that permits to produce goods for specific purposes. 3. Then there has to be a device that is a hard disk, a paper, or any hardware upon which the information can be recorded. 4. And there has to be a system to encode, send, and decode the message. These 4 things, language, transmitter of language, message, and receiver of language, all have to be precisely defined in advance before any form of communication can be possible at all. 5. Eventually, during the transmission of information, it can be translated from one language to another. In living cells, we see all those things. Setting up the rules of communication. The translation of a word in one language to another language is always of mental origin. For example, the assignment of the word chair in English to shizi in Chinese can only be made by intelligence upon common agreement of meaning. In biology, the genetic code is the assignment, a cipher, of 64 triplet codons to 20 amino acids. Eugene Konin wrote in a science paper in 2009, in our opinion, despite extensive and in many cases elaborate attempts to model code optimization, ingenious theorizing along the lines of the coevolution theory, and considerable experimentation, very little definitive progress has been made. Summarizing the state of the art in the study of the code evolution, we cannot escape considerable skepticism. It seems that the two prolonged fundamental questions, why is the genetic code the way it is, and how it had come to be, that was asked over 50 years ago, and the dawn of molecular biology might remain pertinent even in another 50 years. Our consolation is that we cannot think of a more fundamental problem in biology. Since we know only of intelligence to be able to establish a common agreement of meaning of words, this assignment is best explained by the deliberate arbitrary action of a non-human intelligent agency. Information stored in DNA. Chance of intelligence to set up the first blueprint for life. Mycoplasma is one of the smallest self-replicating cells, and its genome has about 500,000 base pairs. It is, however, a pathogen which has to be hosted by other organisms to survive. It does not produce the 20 amino acids used in life. In order to know the threshold of a minimal organismal complexity to sustain life, Pelagibacter ubique is a good candidate, since it is one of the smallest self-replicating free-living cells and produces all 20 amino acids used in life. It has a genome size of 1.3 million base pairs, which codes for about 1,300 proteins. That would be the size of a book with 400 pages, each page with 3,000 characters. The chance to sequence each of the 1.3 million characters in the right order by unguided means to get the precise instructional complex information to have a working self-replicating cell is 1 to 10 to the 700,000. This is in the realm of the absolutely impossible. The likelihood, however, of intelligence to set up an information system essential for life is 100%. We know by repeated experience that intelligence does elaborate blueprints, instructional information, and constructs complex machines, production lines, transistors and computers, and factories with specific purposes. DNA has ultra-high density data storage and compression. Our cells contain at least 92 strands of DNA and 46 double helical chromosomes. In total, the stretch is 6 feet, 1.8 meters, end to end. Every human DNA strand contains as much data as a CD. Every DNA strand in our body stretched end to end would reach from the Earth to the Sun and back 600 times. Cells store data at millions of times more density than hard drives. Not only that, they use the data to store instructions vastly more effectively than human-made programs. Consider that Windows takes 20 times as much space or bits as our genome. The genome is unfathomably more elegant, more sophisticated, and more efficient in its use of data than anything we ever designed. A single gene can be used 100 times by different aspects of the genetic program expressed in hundreds of different ways. Besides the information transmission system of DNA to make proteins, there is the most amazing and advanced information transmission system in operation in each of our cells, which works through light. The more sophisticated and fast an information transmission system is, the more intelligence is required to project and implement it. Light fidelity, or Li-Fi, is a fifth-generation cutting-edge technology, the fastest information transmission system so far invented by man. Life uses not only light, but quantum entanglement to transmit information, which occurs basically instantly. It is logical, therefore, to infer a super-intelligent agency created life's awesome high-speed internet on a molecular level. The origin of such complex communication systems is best explained by an intelligent designer. Since no humans were involved in creating these complex computing systems, a suprahuman intelligent agency must have been the creator. Okay.
All right. Is that all?
Yeah.
I have to say that's pretty good on time. I was keeping track, so you did pretty decent there. So thank you for your opening statement. I realize that we're kind of talking about like which one of our worldviews makes more sense, and I guess you're basing your entire position on the fact that you feel like there has to be an intelligent designer in order for everything to be in existence now, for all life to be in existence, for this universe, everything like that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Would evolution? Because you harped on evolution a pretty good bit in it. Now, if all of that had happened naturally, does that necessarily disprove God?
No, not necessarily. We could say that eventually God created the basic molecules and left them on their own, and then eventually they complexified. The thing is that this is very unlikely, as I exposed in my introduction, based on the unlikeliness to have a first genome of that kind of complexity, which would be required to have a first go of the first living cell.
Okay. Well, then, for me at least, if it's more than possible and probable that whether or not God exists, evolution would have still happened, then it seems like basing the validity of your worldview or your validity of Christianity on this idea that an intelligent designer is necessary for the diversity of life and for things to have happened, the way for the universe and everything to come into existence naturally. I feel like because God could still exist and those things be true, I feel like that kind of renders it a moot point as to the question of whether or not a God exists, especially whether or not the Christian God exists. So, I mean, we can discuss a few of these points because I wrote down plenty of them. I just kind of wanted to put it out there right off the bat, that you don't necessarily have to accept creationism or intelligent design in order for you to consider Christianity to be a correct worldview. There is a possibility and a more than likely probability that Christianity versus creationism versus non-creationist Christianity, more than likely non-creationist Christianity, if it were true, still the fact that evolution happened naturally doesn't disprove Christianity. That's all that I kind of wanted to get out there, which that might have come through really, really mumbled. But so can you define information for me as far as the context that you mean concerning DNA?
Yes, I can give you an analogy in order for everyone to understand it. The genome stores a blueprint in a very colloquial way said. It is instructional complex information which directs the making of proteins, and a good part of it also has other functions like regulatory functions and so forth. But basically, that is the main thing, that it stores basically instructional informations in order to precisely make and control the operation of the living cell.
Okay. But you see, the problem is that you're totally neglecting how chemistry works in general with that.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like for you to say that that like DNA is a language or like a literal code in a way that it's generated by a mind, you would first have to prove that the DNA knows what's going to happen when it produces a certain kind of protein. Now, does the DNA know what's going to happen when it produces, like when reading its an mRNA and producing the protein chain and everything like that? Like, does it know exactly what's going to happen when that protein is produced?
Well, DNA is not conscient, of course, but DNA is a software, is the hard disk, and the instructions are the software. And
that's a really bad analogy. Do you want me to tell you why?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the problem with that is that DNA is a chemical. So now, when I mix chemicals together, or chemicals do some process, right? Let's say I dumped an acid into a base instead of slowly like putting it in there and slowly not titrating it, but instead of properly mixing an acid and a base, let's just say I just throw them in there. Are they conscious enough to know that they are going to explode and that's what's going to happen? It's going to shatter the flask?
Well, as I said before, DNA is not conscient.
Right. But, okay. I just wanted to make sure that in a different context, you still have the same opinion. So when DNA goes through these processes, where the RNA, reads it, gets the anticodons, and then travels out to the ribosome, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's ribosome, and it's read by the ribosome and produces these amino acid chains that become proteins. Like when it has that on the DNA code, the DNA does not know what's going to happen as a result of it being read, right?
Well, I can make you an analogy. I'm a machine designer, okay? So let's suppose that my boss, I think you maybe yourself a Godless engineer, so you know how engineering works. That means when an engineering team comes together, they pre-establish a goal. They have a purpose to make a device, a machine or a factory or whatever it is. And then this team sits together and they will think about how to make these devices with that purposeful goal. So they will put that on the drawing table, maybe today with AutoCAD. They will sit on the computer and they will make all the drawings. And when the drawings are meeting the goal of that device, and they have all the specification of the machines, how they have to be built and made, and what materials and so forth, then of course the information on the paper is a product of intelligence, but the information and the paper itself is not conscient, of course. And the same situation is in DNA. We have the hardware, which is the DNA molecule, and we have the software, which is the information stored through the genetic code in the DNA. And those then will be transmitted to RNA polymerase and the ribosome, and then you have, in the end, proteins which will fold into 3D form and become functional proteins. So the issue is, how did the first information, the right sequence of nucleotides be stored in the first genome or DNA in order to become functional?
Okay, so let me write your question down. How did... Okay, so I've got your question written down, but I have a few things to cover first. So let me ask you this one question. Can God be wrong?
I think God is always right.
Okay, obviously. I kind of figured, but I didn't want to assume anything. So if God cannot be wrong and God is always right, why did he create this software with a lot of bugs, with a lot of problems, with a lot of issues? If you want to say that the body is intelligently designed, why does it have easily, easily exploitable systems in it. Well, why does his design seem to be just inherently flawed? Like we would see with naturally occurring things, because there's no kind of intelligence directing it, right? When you design a piece of machinery, Otangelo, do you design that piece of machinery with flaws in it? Like obviously, like, do you ever design a piece of machinery that has that has a certain amount of percentage of like breaking, like just right out the gate?
Okay, first of all, in order to get a first self-replicating cell, there are on each step.
No. Let's not go to that. Can you answer my question?
Yes, I will come to it.
I don't want you to start at the very beginning. Like, I don't want you to start at the very first cell and then explain for 3.5 billion years and finally get to your answer. I just want to know, like, would you design a piece of machinery that has like a substantial risk to break, and like, I know me, as far as a software engineer goes, we go through risk analysis and we determine how likely it is that something is going to fail, and then we build fail safes into it. God seems to have not done that, if he did in fact design us intelligently. So I'm just kind of wondering if you can explain that.
He actually has done it. If you don't know, the cell has several error check and repair mechanisms that starts in the DNA genome. And there are all the time there are lessons, there is damage in the DNA, and there are fantastic, super advanced mechanisms, even through electricity going through the DNA, which makes error checks and then repairs the DNA. And also only the ribosome has 11 different error check and repairs mechanisms, and that permits to bring the error rate down to 1 error in 10 billion. Nucleotides corrected, expressed. That is an error rate which is extremely low. And if these error check and repair mechanisms would not be in place right from the beginning, John, then there would be no life, because then the mutation rate would be far too high. And I can send you after our chat links, and then you can look it up. I'm talking with basis, with facts, not with just something that I made up.
Right. Okay. But my point is that if God is never wrong, and he's a perfect being, and he's a perfect designer, shouldn't the error level be 0?
No, because we live in a universe which is governed by entropy. So things, they wind down, and that is also in regards of information. And when you read Genesis, it says not that God created a perfect world, but he created a world which he named very good. And then, of course, I am a literalist in regards of Genesis. I believe that the fall, as described there, happened, and then there came sin, and that corrupted the entire universe.
Well, yeah, but you see, there's no evidence that a woman eating an apple against some jackass's wishes actually changed like any kind of fabric of reality. So, I mean, you're just baselessly asserting that is the case, and I mean, this is essentially a God of the gaps kind of argument. I mean, essentially, if God is perfect, then I guess you would agree that he has created us to be flawed from the very beginning. Because okay, let me ask you this: if you consider Adam and Eve to be the perfect human beings, right? And if they had not have eaten from the apple, then they would still be alive, right?
Well, I don't know what would have happened if they wouldn't have eaten from.
Well, then you don't know your Bible all that well, because God explicitly said that the punishment for them eating the apple was that now that they were going to die. So, I mean, that means that they would still be alive today if they had not have disobeyed God and eaten the apple. So did God knowingly change our body plans after Eve ate that apple and like pissed him off?
Yeah, I think that the entire universe became corrupted through that act. Now, if you would see a
then that means God's not all powerful, right?
Well, I think all powerful has to be defined. Of course, God cannot make a square circle or other illogical things. He cannot lie and say the truth in the same time. So all powerful is something that has to be defined.
Well, yeah, but how does that exactly equate to, preventing the universe from being, like, preventing his creation from becoming flawed? Kind of seems like that would be something that he could actually do. This is not like a square circle or married bachelor kind of situation here. This is pretty much just putting his magical foot down and not letting it happen. No?
Well, I am not God to tell you exactly what were the motivations for the history to go the way it went. But I think that God has a fantastic plan of salvation, and we are included, and Christ came. He died on the cross for our sins, and we have the way to find redemption and to find eternal life. And God will restore actually with the new earth and the new universe, which is written about it in Revelation, and he will restore and make actually in the future perfect eternal environment for us. So
okay, well, so you talked about defining what all powerful means. You never actually answered me on the definition of information, which I know is kind of going back a little bit, but I feel like you're still just using kind of a God of the gaps kind of argument here. In order to suggest that you don't know why God, like, for instance, why did God create people with genetic diseases? Is that would you say that the primary cause of genetic diseases and cancer and all that kind of stuff is the primary reason why that stuff is in existence today is because Eve ate that apple?
Yes, I believe literally in that story.
Okay. Well, forgive me if, I find that just quite a bit ridiculous because we have natural answers as to why, like, cancers form, why genetic diseases happen. And I think that a perfect God would not design somebody, design any kind of living organism to have those potential flaws in them. Like, sometimes deer are born with horns growing out of their eye sockets. You can find pictures of it on the internet. I mean, was God just having a sadistic day that day? Like, was he like, you know what? I feel a little bored right now. I'm going to make this one born with a horn growing out of its eye. And then the angels are like, God, Jesus Christ. And then Jesus comes in and he's like, what happened? I mean, you understand how ridiculous it seems to say that we're intelligently designed when there's when there are so many errors that happen in nature itself. So
yeah, this is a very, John, this is a very common objection which I hear very, very frequently. But usually I answer in that way. When you see a cell phone which has some kind of problem, you would not automatically conclude that the cell phone was not intelligently designed.
So good point there. But nobody is claiming that Google, who does my phone, I don't ever claim that the engineers that created the hardware or the software or anything like that were perfect. Nobody ever claims that.
The Bible doesn't claim it either. If you read Genesis, it says that in the beginning, when God created everything, it was very good. It doesn't say it was perfect. We know actually that in the future, when God will make a new heaven and a new earth, that will be perfect without any flaws whatsoever.
I'm saying that if God is perfect and he's a perfect designer, he would not build or design such shit things. That's my point.
Okay. If you think so, I don't want to object to you on that, but that doesn't bring you to materialism or to the claim that there is no creator whatsoever. So how do
I don't say that. I'm an agnostic atheist, which I know plenty of people have a problem with, but I assert that I don't believe in a God, but I don't know whether or not a God exists. So just to be clear on that.
Yes, but in in order to find truth in regards of origins, you need to have solid epistemological framework. And what I very frequently see, and I have brought that up in my video, which you actually showed, is that atheists, they are very used and very versed to bring up arguments against the theistic worldview. But what they need to do is actually to substantiate their position by providing positive evidence which tops theistic arguments, which lead to believe that materialistic claims explain better our existence rather than theistic claims. And I've never seen any atheist whatsoever to explain how we can exist without a creator. Can you, John?
I mean, yeah, we've been able to explain this kind of shit for a while. So I don't know what you mean by the fact that we can't. Like, I mean, do I have a book? Like, do I need to write down in my notepad here, like, shit went bang, and like, will that suffice? I mean, my point is that there have been plenty of scientists and actual experts that have been able to explain, like, the inflation of the universe, how that happened. Now, do we have all the absolute answers? Probably not. Do we have very good ideas about what probably happened? I would say so. But just because we don't have 100% certainty on it doesn't mean that God is the natural, like, preconceived answer. Like if you can't, like, for instance, if I can't give you a detailed explanation that you're just going to deny anyways, if I can't give you a detailed explanation for the inflation of the universe and how that proceeded to eventually form into dust particles were able to eventually form into the Earth, and then the Earth was eventually able to support life, so therefore life then started to form. Like, if I could explain the exact science of everything like that, you're still going to just deny it, are you not?
Well, the problem, John, is that basically in regards to every relevant questions of a relevant question of origins, the materialistic view doesn't provide any compelling answers whatsoever. And that is what I have seen in every debate with every atheist. And it is in regard of every relevant questions of origins. You mentioned the expansion of the universe. Science, there is a consensus that it had a beginning. Therefore, we all know the cosmological argument. Then we know that the universe is governed by laws of physics. Where did those come from? Then the universe is finely tuned. How is that to be explained by naturalism?
Well, hold on. So I mean, you understand that the laws of physics are descriptive and not prescriptive, right?
No, I disagree with that. I made a video. You can watch it at my channel, Intelligent Design Academy. And the scientists, they say that the laws of physics and the physical universe, they are actually interdependent. They need to go and merge together. There cannot be a physical universe without laws of physics, and there would be no laws of physics without the physical universe. So they had to come to start together.
Okay, well then, if the laws of physics are prescriptive and not descriptive, then why is it that the laws of physics change whenever we discover new things about our universe?
Well, they might change a little bit, but we know that our universe is very stable.
No. Hold on, Otangelo. No, they don't change a little bit. They radically changed, especially around Einstein's time with his general theory of relativity and his special theory of relativity. So, I mean, those were big changes to physics as we know them and physical descriptions of our universe. So you trying to pass it off as just being a little change is a bit disingenuous, considering the fact that we've always changed our description of reality when new information has presented itself. Well, generally speaking.
Well, maybe our information becomes more refined, but the fact is that the universe works in an orderly manner, and that depends on these laws of physics, and it starts from the subatomic particles and goes to atoms and then to stars and to the expansion of the universe, and all these kind of stuff, which must be precisely correct. Otherwise, there would be no universe at all.
Okay, so can you steel man the Big Bang Theory for me?
What does mean steel man?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, English is not my native language, so.
No, that's fine. So, like a straw man is to build up a fake argument and then knock it down. Steel manning is trying to correctly represent an opponent's argument so that you show that you clearly understand like what they are actually arguing. So I'm just wondering, can you explain what the Big Bang Theory is?
Well, I see it very repetitively, John, that people say, well, the Big Bang started with the singularity, and the first moment we don't know what happened at that first moment of the Big Bang, and then there was that expansion. But I think that science is very clear, and Vilenkin and so forth, they have pointed out that the universe had a beginning. And then, of course, we have to ask what caused that beginning into existence.
Right. And currently, the best explanation for that is a fluctuation in a quantum scalar field that released a massive amount of energy, which we know quantum scalar fields can do. They release this massive amount of energy and expand the universe to smaller than it is now, but still expanded most of the universe in less than 10 to the negative 32 seconds. So it seemed almost instantaneous. But at that point, the entirety of the universe was filled with inflaton particles, and these inflaton particles then transformed like energy regularly transforms now. They transform from these inflaton particles into what would become regular matter, which it took 300,000 years for even atoms to form in our universe. And because that was the first point when light could even travel through our universe. And then can you tell me, like, how long after the Big Bang do you think that the Earth was formed?
Well, no, I would first like to answer to your point. I mean, we know well the claim by Lawrence Krauss with virtual particles and so forth, but the problem here is that virtual particles, John, they need a quantum vacuum. And in order to have that quantum vacuum, you need to explain where that came from.
Well, I mean, obviously I'm not an expert in this field, but quantum scalar fields exist, and we've been able to prove that they exist. Now, we can't go back in time and do experiments at before the expansion of the universe to be able to detect this inflaton field, because this quantum scalar field it was in a false vacuum point, and then it got nudged over an edge and then went to a full vacuum point. So I mean, this is one possible explanation. We're not 100% sure about it, but it seems like the best possible explanation that we can come to, given our current understanding of quantum mechanics. So, I mean, I feel like you're asking me to provide you with something that I can probably never really obtain, and now you're just going to claim, well, that means God is a better explanation, which God is not an explanation at all. God doesn't explain anything. I mean, the big difference between my position and your position is that you got a grand wizard that snapped his fingers and created the universe, while I think that it happened naturally.
So nature created itself?
Well, no, the fabric of reality would have created and inflated this universe. So, I mean, the nature of reality would have created this universe and everything.
Don't you see the logical fallacy in this?
No. Can you explain it to me?
Something cannot come from nothing. And as I told you, the quantum...
No, steel man, what a scientific definition of nothing is.
No, I can tell you what a philosophical nothing is. It is the absence of absolutely anything.
No, you see, but that's that's not something that actually exists in reality. You seem to be equivocating what philosophically you can ponder in your mind abstractly with what is actually possible in reality.
Yes, I mean, I think we both can agree on the fact that being cannot come from non-being.
Okay, hold on. But still, can you please steelman what the scientific version of nothing is?
Yes, I mean, we know that they claim that nothing isn't actually really nothing. It is some kind of positive and negative energy which cancels itself out and so forth. But as I told you, these theories, especially brought forward by Lawrence Krauss, they neglect the fact that these quantum particles, they need a quantum vacuum, which also has to be explained where it came from. So you do not remove the question of the cause of all this stuff.
Yeah, but can you understand how very small that gap is getting for your God to live in now?
No, I think actually that the gap where materialism can the gap for materialism is becoming greater and greater, because materialism doesn't basically explain anything. It doesn't explain the cause of the quantum vacuum. It doesn't explain the fine tuning of everything, of the universe, of the subatomic particles, of the four main forces, the fine tuning of the Earth. There are over 360 different constants, fine-tuning constants, which must be just right. I mean, if we just
no. So let me stop you right there, because these fine-tuning things that you're talking about here, I mean, you're talking about just for our universe and our existence to exist. You cannot know what other arrangements of those constants could exist that would cause a universe to pop into existence and fill with life. Just because it won't be our kind of life, or the kind of life that we experience now, does not mean that it's not life. So, I mean, there's no way that you can know that.
Well, we cannot know with absolute certainty. What we try is by using abductive reasoning to come to the best explanation of reality. And I think that materialism provides basically no compelling explanation to any of those questions whatsoever.
Okay, so I want to read a couple super chats because they're directly relevant to what we're talking about right now, and that's from Uhan Roderick, who says materialism is not the same as atheism, Otangelo, and naturalism is also not atheism, Otangelo. So I feel like you're mixing up both naturalism and materialism with atheism.
Yeah, John, I think this is a very boring point when atheists start to squibble about the definition of atheism, and I really I'm
not squibbling about the definition of atheism. I mean, Uhan and I just told you that materialism and naturalism are not atheism.
Yeah, it depends. If you are talking about weak atheism or strong atheism. I mean, if you are positing strong atheism, then you are positing that most likely there is no God. And of course, then you have to stick to a worldview where there is no agency which has directed anything in regards of the physical universe and its making.
Okay, well, so can you point to something that, okay, so first of all, define what you mean by supernatural.
God is an eternal, timeless, spaceless, intelligent, super powerful, moral, personal being.
I highly doubt the moral part, but I asked you like to define like what does it mean to you for something to be supernatural? That would be above the natural, which would be like an extension, I guess, outside of naturalism, being that materialism, naturalism just means that the material things that we experience here in this world are all that there is and that there's no supernatural. If those are indeed wrong, can you prove that a supernatural existence exists?
No, nobody can prove that, John. We can only, as I told you before, we can make only inference to the best explanation. What fits best the evidence? What kind of mechanism explains best our reality? And there are two options, basically. One is a worldview with God, and the other is without God.
Okay, but you have yet to give me any evidence that should compel anybody to believe that a supernatural realm exists.
Well, in my introduction, I gave you very, very strong reasons to think that life could not have occurred randomly by unguided events because it is too unlikely, the odds are too big that a correct nucleotide sequence could emerge randomly on a prebiotic Earth, which is required to have life.
I feel like you don't understand statistics or statistical analysis or anything like that at all.
Well, I think I do. If you look, we have.
No, hold on. Okay, so you think that you do. Let's go through something real quick. Have you ever heard of what pigeonhole theory is?
No.
Okay, so basically, imagine in your mind's eye that you have a board with 12 holes in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have 13 pigeons.
Okay.
What is the statistical probability that one of those holes will have 2 pigeons in it?
I don't know. Explain it to me. I would
okay.
have.
All right. Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's 100% probable that any one of those holes could have a second pigeon that is also inhabiting it. If you were to stuff all these pigeons in a hole, because you have 13 pigeons and you just have 12 holes, so that means all 12 are going to be filled up, and then you're going to shove another one uncomfortably into another hole.
Okay.
All right.
So what does that have to do with the statistics to have a first genome?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So so basically, if you have a specific set of things, or you have a large enough set of things, as long as your probability is not 0%, it will 100% happen at some point. Now, when that will happen, it's hard to determine. But there's a 100% probability that it will happen.
Okay. Do you know what would happen if we would have nucleotides on a prebiotic Earth just laying around? You have two possibilities. One would be that they would complexify to become an informational genome, and the second possibility would be that they would simply disintegrate and become asphalts. What do you think would be the more likely scenario?
That right there is an equivocation, but equivalence fallacy, right? Those are not like, or maybe it's false dichotomy, but so these proteins and everything like that would have started to form in on a pre-life Earth. Right, most likely in some kind of watery area, they would have started to form. Right, and so it's not the situation of just you've got 2 amino acids that are just laying there on the ground and then they dissolve. It's the fact that the environment would have started to produce these amino acids and continuously produce these amino acids. Do you understand?
Well, the problem is that science has no clue how the polymerization of amino acids could have occurred without the ribosome, which is highly technical in order to do so.
They're chemicals, Otangelo. They would have started to form. Like we've got experiments where we can show how amino acids can form naturally without any kind of human intervention.
Okay, let's suppose you have on a prebiotic Earth about 500 different amino acids. So you need to select 20 which are used in life from those which are existing on a prebiotic Earth. There was no selection process to select those which are used in life. And secondly, even if that would be possible, John, then you would have to sort them out of left and right-handed amino acids because life only uses left-handed amino acids. There was no natural selection process on prebiotic Earth to do that. And now let's suppose even we would have that.
Well, hold on. Can we pause real quick? I know I'm interrupting you, but can you, because you said something that was I consider to be very wrong. And I'm just wondering, can you? I know I'm asking you to steel man a lot, but I haven't watched your content. I don't really have a lot of experience with you. Can you steel man what natural selection is?
Yes, genes, they have alleles, different frequencies of alleles, and through mutations, then the environment is the different kind of environments. Some alleles, they are selected and then spread to the population. That happens through evolution. But in the scenario which we are talking about, there was no natural selection.
Right. Well, for you to say that natural selection just didn't exist at that point in time, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous because, I mean, at the very end there, when you said that these mutations would have been selected for, you're kind of getting there. Natural selection would be the environment, like whatever environment an organism is in, like whatever mutations allow that particular organism to survive in that environment would be selected for. Natural selection is just the natural action of it being selected, like the natural action of some configuration of chemicals or of life or something like that, which allows it to propagate and survive and happen again and again and again. So for you to say that just natural selection didn't exist at that point, I think is a very big oversight on your part, because when amino acids would have started to form, when RNA started to form, there would have been natural selection that was going on. Like, for instance, you talked about left-handed proteins are the only ones that are used. So that seems to indicate to me that left-handed proteins provided some kind of advantage in whatever way. I'm not sure what way it is, but they would have provided some kind of advantage that would allow it to survive in that environment, allow the RNA to keep replicating, allow for the building of more complex organisms and complex things. So, I mean, again, it seems like you don't understand statistical probability or what natural selection is as a mechanism of change in natural chemical processes, or not natural chemical processes, but a change in chemicals in an environment.
But first you need DNA replication, John. And of course, there was not DNA replication at that point. So there was no natural selection in regards of the natural selection kicks in when life starts, and there was no life at that point. So there was no selection mechanism. And secondly, molecules laying around on a prebiotic Earth, they have no urge to become alive. So no, there was no natural selection at that point.
You see, I completely disagree, because like, just take the RNA world hypothesis, for instance, that RNA was first to develop. There would, like I said before, the natural selection would have come in with, you know, these certain kinds of proteins allowed the RNA to survive, or somehow the orientation of the amino acids or the proteins, they allowed them to survive in the environment. They became useful in some kind of way and allowed them to continue to be generated. You understand?
Well, there was, first of all, there was no life at that point. And molecules, they have no urge by themselves to become alive. And they have no urge to polymerize to become proteins. And you need the right sequence.
Well, but do you understand that like piling up small changes can result in life? Like, these small changes of what best allows it to survive an environment, or what best allows a chemical to remain intact in an environment, and then eventually, you know, that would eventually lead to organisms and life forming in the form of, you know, single-celled organisms. I mean, that's generally how it would happen. Now, again, I'm not an expert on this particular area, but what I do know about natural selection and evolution and, how all of this works is that these things would have been able to persist in the environment that they are in. And as more complex things come into existence through all of the chemical reactions, can you tell me exactly how many chemical reactions can happen in a single, not even a snap of a finger, barely a snap of a finger? Like, if you have chemical reactions that are happening all across the earth in every single square inch of the sea, that is a lot of chemical reactions happening. So even if it's a low percentage of these things producing a configuration that would eventually end up propagating and becoming more complex, even if that's vanishingly small, because of the amount of chemical reactions that are happening, that means that it would 100% happen.
Well, the problem, John, is that what we see in life is where information directs and instructs the making of molecular machines. And there is a logic where instruction dictates how proteins are made. So it is analogously the same as an engineer makes a blueprint to make a machine. That's what we see in cells. And that kind of structure where information dictates the making of machines, that has always only been observed to be possible by intelligent agents which have a specific goal. And the genome directs the making of proteins. And there is also the requirement of the information transmission system, which is from DNA to messenger RNA and then the translation through the ribosome. And that had all to be together all at once. Otherwise, nothing would happen. I mean, the genome.
I disagree with that.
No,
they didn't all. No, they didn't all have to come into existence at once. You guys always try to play that game that all of these things would have to immediately pop into existence in order for them to work. But what you don't understand is that evolution is an incremental thing. So it would like one thing would have developed, and then another thing would have developed, and then another thing would have developed, and then these organisms would have died off because they can't survive in the environment any longer. But the organisms that changed and they adapted to the environment, they would have been able to survive. And so it just keeps going like that all throughout time till we get to the point that we're at today.
You are neglecting that there was no life prior to the first living self-replicating.
No, I'm not.
Cell, and we are talking about.
I've completely explained the general idea of how that would have developed initially. Again, not an expert, but I know the general idea of how that would have happened. So I have explained it from non-organic chemicals developing into organic chemicals and then RNA, and then going on from there, what would be best for what allows the organism to survive better in the environment would have been developing into DNA, cells, and everything like that. So to say that I haven't explained that to you is just really neglecting about the last half hour that we've been talking.
Well, I congratulate you, John, because it seems that you know more than the specialists, the scientists in the field of abiogenesis research, which are not saying that it could have happened as you are saying. They confess
No. So let me be very specific here, okay? Let me be very specific here.
Like, for example, John.
Otangelo, I have the ability to mute you. If you don't let me talk, right, I'm going to mute you. All right? I don't want to have to do that. I just want to be very specific here. I provided with a very general roadmap of how it would have happened. I did not give you specific explanations at an expert level of how it did happen. I just know in general how it would have happened. And that's the exact way that we would have that we've come to any other scientific conclusion in the past. Like, we know that it has to go through, this particular chain of events, but that doesn't mean that we know exactly how it goes through these chains of events. So I just want to be very specific there about that it did not give an expert opinion on abiogenesis and where like exactly how life started.
Well, this is blind beliefism, John, because there is absolutely no evidence, scientific evidence, to back up what you are claiming. Actually, the evidence.
That's not true.
Well, give me a paper which actually makes a compelling case for abiogenesis, and actually, if there is even experimental evidence that it can happen by natural means.
I believe that it's the not Michelson-Morley. That's the rotation of the Earth experiment. Crap. I'm blanking on it right now. I'm gonna be able to get it for you. I mean, I'm sure that you've heard it all before. Miller-Urey. The Miller-Urey experiment showed that organic chemicals, amino acids, can form naturally without any kind of intelligent intervention.
Okay, John, I have a video on my channel, Intelligent Design Academy, about that specific topic. They didn't produce all the 20 amino acids, and to make tryptophan is extremely complex. It is a biosynthesis process which is only performed through the cell. There is no evidence that all the set of the 20 amino acids were extant on the prebiotic Earth.
Let me correct you on something here. Or let me bring something to your attention. Do you agree that Michelson-Morley proved that amino acids can naturally arrange themselves and naturally form without any kind of human intervention, or intelligent intervention, rather?
I don't know of any science paper which has provided how the 20 amino acids used in life could have emerged prebiotically and naturally. In special, there is the problem of the homochirality, that they are only left-handed. They are racemic in nature, and you need the right set of 20 amino acids. The making of some, like as I said before, tryptophan is an extremely complex biosynthesis process. These amino acids are not found naturally on Earth, so the evidence is not in favor of natural.
I mean, I disagree. I disagree. I disagree because I mean, we do naturally find them occurring, like in our bodies and in living things in general. That's natural.
Well, John, I'm not saying that they are not found naturally. What I am saying that the amino acids which supposedly existed on prebiotic Earth, there were hundreds of them. They would have had to be selected because only 20 are used, in some cases 22. Secondly, you would have to sort them out between left and right-handed amino acids. There was no selection process there to sort it out because molecules, they have
How do you know that?
Well, because it is obvious, because nature doesn't select things for no reasons. What selects is intelligence. This is something that only intelligence can do. If you have a purpose to make something, then you select the materials that are required to make the device which you intend to do. On a prebiotic Earth, there were just molecules randomly, chaotically, and there was no urge to select anything at all.
No. So natural selection is a natural process that happens regardless of whether there's any kind of intelligence there. So, I mean, it kind of seems to me like you're, I don't even know, special pleading this point, because for you to say that there was no selection process whatsoever is just ridiculous. I mean, there's always going to be a selection process, whether that's organic or inorganic materials.
So why would natural occurrences, chaotically, just of molecules lay around, join together at the building place only the right amino acids which are required for life, and then select the ones which are left-handed from the ones that are right-handed ones? And even let's suppose that you had that set of used amino acids which are used in life, you still have to polymerize them to have a functional protein. But let's suppose you even get to that. A functional protein on a prebiotic Earth would do nothing by itself, because proteins, they work only in a joint venture with all other proteins in the cell. So that's why I say boldly, the cell is an all or nothing business, and cells are irreducibly complex. They cannot emerge gradually.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all of that right there was just hogwash. And I mean, it went one ear and out the other for me, because it's just been none of that is true. I mean, the cells are not irreducibly complex. Normally, creationists like to bring up the bacterial flagellum when they want to talk about irreducible complexity. But the fact is that we've been able to remove portions of the bacterial flagellum, and it's only affected its mobility. It hasn't actually caused it to disappear or anything like that. There's also, to say that cells are irreducibly complex, eukaryotic cells are very different from prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells would have developed first, then eukaryotic cells would have developed next. So to say that like the eukaryotic cells, like our cells, are irreducibly complex totally ignores prokaryotes. So, I mean, you're advocating for the ignoring of an entire portion of living things here. So it just seems rather ridiculous for you to assert that. But so there's a couple of super chats here that I want to read out real quick because they're kind of pertinent to where I think we need to pivot to, and that's Krismer and Dave says false dichotomy much. I'm pagan, more than two options. And then Uhan Roderick followed it up with the magic cosmic squirrel explains it all. So if the magic cosmic squirrel is a possibility of why life is here, why this universe exists, then how is it not a better, or at least as good explanation as your God explanation?
Well, if it is, bring the evidence. Let's see.
All right. Well, the evidence is that Uhan has a book of the magic squirrel, and it talks about how the magic squirrel buried his nut in a particular portion of the fabric of reality, and then that nut expanded immediately and developed into this universe. And this magical squirrel developed all of the blueprints and everything like that for life with his little squirrel hands. And that's exact. I mean, the exact script that you run, Otangelo, replace God with magical squirrel.
Okay,
that's gonna be a shirt.
Well, find me some people which actually believe in your magic squirrel, and I mean, it's great.
Uhan Roderick. I mean, he sent a super chat. I mean, he worships before the magical nut. So
well, maybe we can posit the spaghetti monster. I like it more than your flying squirrel.
Well, so what disproves the flying spaghetti monster?
Maybe nothing. Maybe it's the right choice. Maybe we should all stick to the flying spaghetti monster.
Spaghetti exists, therefore it's more than likely plausible. So
great, you changed my mind, John.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the point is that where I wanted to pivot was, how do we know that it's your specific God? Like, because you're not just arguing for intelligent design, you're specifically arguing for the Christian God, no?
Yes, correct.
Okay. How do we know that it's the specific Christian God versus all the other possible ones? Like Krismer is an Epicurean. He, if I'm not wrong, there, Krismer, you believe in multiple gods existing, but they just don't care about our existence whatsoever. And his philosophy is to have or live the most pleasurable way in life without interfering with other people's lives and everything like that. Not to belittle your point of view there, Krismer, or anything like that. But I'm just kind of curious, what exactly separates the Christian God from all the other definitions of God?
Well, first of all, the God of the Bible fits the evidence, like the origin of the universe, the description of God, like being timeless, being eternal, being spirit, being personal, being moral, being good. and so forth. That fits with the origin of the universe. Then we have, of course, the Bible, where the God of the Bible reveals himself in a gradative manner, starting the Old Testament. And then specifically in regards of Christ, we have several lines of reasoning and evidence why Christ is a historical person. I saw you made several videos on doubting that Jesus is a historical person. We have the prophecies in the Old Testament, over 300, which point to Christ as being the Messiah. We have the historical evidence outside of the Bible. There are over 40 different mentionings of Christ which are extra biblical. We have the Shroud of Turin, which I mentioned in one of our chats, which you said, oh, it's from the 14th century. Well, that is highly doubted because the 1988 carbon dating that is questioned today by scientists which are investigating the shroud, and we have absolutely no explanation whatsoever what brought that picture on the shroud, and it fits perfectly with Jesus Christ. So we have also evidence of the apostles, of graves which have been found. So there are several lines of reasoning why the Christian God is the true one.
Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning. Which, I mean, you know, I don't really appreciate the gish galloping there, Otangelo, because I mean, I don't know if you mean to do it or not, but you state a whole bunch of things in such a short amount of time. It's really hard for me to actually remember and respond to everything that you said. But as far as how the Christian explanation of God goes matches what you think is reality, how is that different from my magical squirrel and his nut? You know?
Well, first of all, the magical squirrel, as far as I know, there are no worshippers around the whole world which worship him. There are no people which have made miraculous experiences like appearances, which have...
Hold on. So, does the amount of adherence to a religion matter as to whether or not that religion's true?
Well, I did just make a comparison to your magic squirrel. There is whatsoever no known people which worship that magic squirrel. But
I don't care how many people do or do not worship my magical squirrel and his nut. What I'm asking is, sorry, my wife is cracking up. My point is that the amount of adherence that a particular religion has does not necessarily mean that it's a false belief or a false religion, you know? So, I mean, the magical squirrel and his nut explain everything that your God does. He's a good squirrel, right? He's very moral. He's caring. He's personal. You know, if you go really hard and for long enough, you'll definitely feel his presence come upon you. You know, so I mean, you can substitute in magical squirrel with God, and it'll be the exact same definition for both entities. So
John, let me answer to that. There was about a few months ago an evangelistical campaign nearby where I live, and I was invited to participate at that campaign. And they had a tent on the side of the bus there, and they invited people which had problems and so forth to go to the tent and have some counseling. And I was there, and there came a woman in, and this woman was started to be possessed. She was screaming, and she was saliva came out of her mouth and so forth. It was a clear demonic possession. And then the pastor, he prayed, and in the moment that he invoked the name of Jesus Christ, that demon left her, and she stayed there for a few minutes on the floor, and then she wake up, and she then told her story. She said that she was consecrated to a demon when she was 7 years old by blood in her macumba, that's a Brazilian ritual, and her whole life she was perturbed by that demon. She had no peace, and she was constantly possessed by that demon. And at that moment, that pastor prayed and said that that demon should leave her body in the name of Jesus Christ. It wasn't in the name of John. It wasn't in the name of Otangelo. It wasn't in the name of anyone else. It was only in the name of Jesus Christ that demon left her. And I presenced that with my own eyes. And this happens on the whole world. This doesn't happen just here around where I am. And that happened also in the time of Christ. So why do demons leave people in the name of Jesus Christ and not in the name of John or Otangelo or anyone else?
I'm so sorry, Otangelo. I was ordering another drink, and apparently, after hogwash, I'm supposed to say it's rutabaga or something. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful there, Otangelo, but I mean your whole demon possession thing is really far out there and ridiculous. I mean, honestly, I feel like I've seen the same quality out of horror movies. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, that was a pretty fucked up movie. But still, I get that you're convinced by that piece of evidence. I'm not convinced by that piece of evidence. How can you know? How can you know that it wasn't a albino squirrel that inhabited her entire life?
Well, maybe we should have invoked your squirrel and see if maybe then the demon would have left her. I don't know. We have never seen that to happen. But in the name of Jesus Christ, demons are leaving. Well, try. Did you go?
I banish you, Jerry. I mean, I'm fairly certain that if you would have slapped her with, a hard enough across the face and screamed at Jerry, the albino squirrel, she might have snapped out of it. I mean, I don't know. But then again, I don't know that entire story. Like, I don't know that story in general, but my experience with these demon possession stories is that they always have to twist and mix up different facts and everything like that in order to make it seem plausible. So those are not good evidence of anything. I mean, demon possessions have been going on since way before Jesus Christ was a twinkle in God's nutsack. So I don't really buy that particular piece of evidence. So I mean, is there anything else that you can, because I know one other piece of evidence that you tried to pull out was prophecy in the Old Testament.
Yeah, I have experienced actually even prophecies. My wife has experienced prophecies in her life, and I was a fulfillment of a prophecy of a prophet of the family of my wife. And many years before that, I actually met my wife. He made a precise characteristic of my person. And he said exactly who her future husband would be. And when she met me, she knew immediately that I did fit that description. How do you explain that?
I mean, if you throw enough shit at a wall, some of it's going to stick. I'm being serious here, because this is akin to the whole... what's that famous psychic lady? Miss Cleo. This is very similar to a Miss Cleo argument. I mean, Miss Cleo, she would throw guesses at a wall. This is how cold reading works too. Throwing guesses at a wall, making them vague enough to where they'll definitely stick at some point, right? So, I mean, it just seems to me like it's coincidental that it would have, come to fruition. I mean, you're just guessing shit, and then when something becomes right, you're being like, aha! Prophecy!
Well, if we want to return to the prophecies in the Old Testament, there are over 300 prophecies in regards of the Messiah, which have fulfilled in Christ.
353 to be exact.
and look up the statistical possibility that they fulfilled by chance, that it was luck, and you will see that it was probably not luck, but that it was probably a divine inspiration of these writers, which
So this is interesting. I'm glad that you brought this up. So why is it more likely that divine inspiration is the best explanation for this, rather than later authors interpreted the Old Testament to mean these things, and so they wrote these things down in a story form and made Jesus do them? Like, how is it more likely that it's divine inspiration rather than just people reading these, interpreting these prophecies as we understand them now, and then codifying them, writing them down into the Gospels, and even in Paul's writings, because he used the scriptures in order to inform himself about Jesus. Even Paul did this. So, I mean, why is it that it's more likely of divine inspiration rather than just creative writing?
Well, because these prophecies, they are very detailed and precise, and you cannot even say that they were written, or that the Old Testament were written after Christ. Like Jesaja, we have books from the Qumran rolls which are dated 100 years before Christ came, and you can read Jesaja 53, and it brings a very precise description of the suffering of the Messiah. So how do you explain that?
All right. Maybe I can say this in a different way. People read them and then wrote them down as if Jesus fulfilled them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, the problem is that these writings, like the book of Jesaja, was written before Christ came, and we have evidence of that. As I said before, the Qumran rolls, they are dated 100 years before Christ. So the prophecy was indeed written before Christ came. And Jesaja 53 is very detailed in regards of the suffering of the Messiah. And if you take all the prophecies of the Old Testament together, they give a very clear picture about who the Messiah would be and what he would do. So how do you explain that?
I don't mean to be a dick, but I'm probably going to be a dick right now. For the third time, Jewish Christians read Isaiah 52 and 53, as well as all of the other Jewish literature that they would have known, because, and I know this is going to be a big surprise to you, they were Jewish. So they read the shit that because they were definitely intelligent, right? They like Paul in Galatians 1 talked about how his Judaism had advanced beyond his peers. So he knows the Jewish scriptures. He read them and interpreted them and then regurgitated them as if Jesus actually did them, without him actually doing them. But because he read the scriptures, I want to make sure that I'm painfully obvious about this. They read the scriptures and then made shit up to fulfill them. How is this not exactly clicking for you, Otangelo?
Well, you can interpret it as you want, but I mean, the Apostle Paul, he had an epiphany. He had an appearance of Jesus when he converted. We have the apostles; they died for their faith, and they wouldn't have done that if Christ would have been just an illusion or something like that. Why did they? Basically, all the apostles, they gave their life for their faith. How would they have done it if their faith was fake?
Let's now I'm going to use Uhan here as an example because he's a good friend of mine and he knows that, knocking on wood, I really hope nothing happens to him. But let's just say that a mob formed in his local town because he was preaching the word and the wisdom of his magical nut squirrel. And he was killed because he believed in the magical nut squirrel. Does that mean that Wuhan is, or does that mean that the magical nut squirrel exists now because Wuhan truly believes in the magical nut squirrel, and now he's died for his faith? Does that mean that the magical nut squirrel is real, and maybe we should be guarding our houses against various, albino Jerrys running around?
So let's suppose, John, that these apostles, they were brought to the Romans and they had a choice either to deny their faith or to die for their faith. And they actually preferred to die for their faith. Do you think if Christ would have been an illusion or just something which they made up, and they would have had the choice either to renounce their faith or to die for it, would you rather renounce your faith or die for it if it was an illusion or a made-up story?
So, Otangelo, have you watched any Apologia recently?
No.
Okay, well, I highly suggest watching Apologia's videos because, he lays out a really good counter-argument to the death of the apostles. Now, speaking for myself here, there's no reliable information about how the apostles would have died, or where they died, or anything like that, or when they died. The disciples are invented with the Gospels. So essentially, my position is that the Christians that came up with or were first exposed to Christianity are not the ones that are reported as dying for their faith, even if we assume that the evidence that you have for these apostles dying for their faith were true. The first Christians we have no record of. We have no information about, and it isn't until Paul that we even hear about a Jesus person. But we do know that Christians existed before that. So, the first Christians wouldn't have, even if there were first eyewitnesses, they wouldn't have been the ones dying, for their faith. And we don't have any kind of record of what happened to them, other than the fact that Paul was persecuting Christians. And even then, those Christians that he was persecuting were not the quote-unquote original Christians, the disciples.
Well, John, it boils down to incredulity. You are free, of course, not to believe these things about the persecution of the first Christians and the apostles, but I think we have...
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm going to let you finish here in a second. But how am I incredulous? I'm sincerely asking, how am I incredulous by explaining to you about just the general sequence of events from Paul's time until the Gospels? Paul is our first inclination that Jesus even walked the earth. And so, I don't see how I'm being personally incredulous about it.
Well, John, if you compare, if it wouldn't involve faith and all the issues of worldviews and so forth, and it would be just a secular writing, and we would have the amount of writings and papyrus and so forth of any secular story of that time, if it would involve Caesar or Nero or whatever, any historical figure of that person, nobody would doubt with the amount of evidence that we have that these stories are true. So we have no reason to doubt that the Bible and the Gospels and the stories written there are just a work of fiction. And that's
I completely disagree with that. And scholars would disagree with you too, because we know that the Gospels didn't even begin to start being written until the 70s. Before that, you had Paul. Now, let me ask you this. Was Paul an eyewitness to Jesus?
Probably not.
Okay, good. I'm glad that we can start on that shared footing, because Paul, never having actually met or seen Jesus or his disciples, just comes out of the blue with this Christian thing. Of course, he was influenced by Christians that came before him, but he doesn't give any kind of inclination about who they were, where they were, how he persecuted them, or anything like that. He doesn't give us any information about people that came before him. In fact, in Galatians 1, it's at the very beginning of Galatians, he specifically says that he did not get his information from anybody here on earth. He only got it from an appearance of Jesus, like a hallucination or a celestial version of Jesus that appeared to him. Now, I know that you might say that, well, no, he physically appeared to him, but I gotta tell you that if Batman just pops out of nothing right in front of me, and like he just like he not like there's a smoke and then there's Batman. I'm talking about like Batman materializing in front of me. That's a celestial version. Whether or not he's physically flesh or not, he's a celestial Christ. No?
Well, the Apostle Paul, he went actually several times to Jerusalem, and he met some of the apostles like Peter, and I think that he got first-hand information about what they experienced. So,
oh, really? Can you cite the Bible verse where he says this?
It is in, I think, in the Apostle. I don't know in English how. After the first book after the Gospels. The apostle story, I don't know how you say it in
Acts?
English. Yes, Acts, exactly. I think there...
well, no, you see, Acts was written at the end of the first century, so there's no way that it could really have directly involved Paul or any information about Paul. So, I mean, unless you want to speculate like a mysterious source that is like that Paul wrote, maybe, I guess. But I mean, even then, I mean, you're just speculating and creating ad hoc, by the way, a source. And so that's not.
So you believe that Christ is not a historical figure, John?
Yes. So that's kind of been the topic that we've been dancing around right here. I don't believe that he was a historical figure. I don't. I think that, like I've said before, the Paul didn't denote anybody as a disciple, and he also never references Jesus as being a historical figure, and the disciples seem to be invented with the Gospels.
No, I think this is really interesting, because Bart Ehrman and others, which are scholars on the topic, they disagree with you, John.
Well, yeah, they do, but there are scholars that disagree with them. So, I mean, we can get into a scholar fight and throw like Richard Carrier and Raphael Lataster around while you bat up there with Bart Ehrman, but I mean, I don't see any point in like tossing around names of who supports what position. I care about the evidence. I care about what evidence do you have that he actually existed in history, let alone the God of the Bible being real.
Well, I think following John, if you seek him and really want to know him, you will find him and he will find you, as he has found me, as he has found millions and billions of people all around the world, and which believe in Christ and have put their faith in him, and they are lifelong believers as I am, and they are very strongly convinced that Christ is a historical figure and that he actually is who he says to be, namely the Son of God and God itself.
Okay, I have a really big question for you. So when I was a teenager, I masturbated a lot. Did God watch me masturbate? Did Jesus eat popcorn as I masturbated?
I will eat popcorn while you masturbate.
I'm sorry, my wife's been drinking a little bit. She doesn't know how to handle her alcohol yet. My point is I didn't really have a point in that. I just thought it was kind of funny. This whole idea that Jesus and God and everything like that, like, will reveal themselves to us as if Jesus is just going to materialize right behind my camera and be like, "What up, bitch?" and then flip me a finger and then disappear, you know? And it's like, "You're going to hell." And then he flips the hell switch and I burn in hell for eternity. It seems rather ridiculous. But let's go back to the historical discussion. Sorry, I get a little ahead of myself there. So back to the historical discussion there. So what evidence can you cite that proves that Jesus existed in history?
There are no absolute proofs, but we have good evidence.
Well, I meant, like, what evidence can you give me that shows that there's more likely than not chance of Jesus existing in history? Like, what kind of evidence would you suggest should sway me to the historical Jesus side?
Well, I think first of all, you need to want to find God. If you want to find him, you will seek him, and then you will find him, and he will find you. If your mindset is that you do not want to live with God, then you will happily live without him and without believing in him. That is your freedom of choice.
Otangelo, I love it when you guys bring this up. So let me set the scene here, right? I'm in 10th grade. Okay? Hate my life. Still a Christian. I'm Christian as fuck at that point. Have friends that go to church every Wednesday night, pray to God all the time. I mean, I'm a good Christian boy at this point, right? Why is it that I felt compelled to crawl up in a fetal position and cry to God, begging him to kill me because I thought that if I killed myself, I'd go to hell, right? Why is it that God refused to do anything to reveal to me that it's going to be okay, right? Why did God sit there on his throne, on his high fucking horse, and watch a 15, 16-year-old kid crying on his bed, begging him just to let him know that it's going to be okay, or to respond to him in any kind of way? I mean, let me ask you that. Let me put this in a bit different of a context. And this is something I learned from my therapist, which I definitely needed. So, if you were to watch your child, which I'm guessing, I don't know if you have children or not. If you were to watch your child.
Yes, I have a daughter, which is 7 years old.
Okay, if you were to watch your child cry in the fetal position on her bed, begging somebody to let her know that it's okay and that, suicide is not an option. What kind of parent, what kind of father figure would sit there and watch the child writhe in agony? Can you tell me that?
Well, I think you are questioning why God didn't hear your prayer. Is that what you're asking?
I'm questioning why God is a giant dick and watches suffering happening all the time and chooses to not do anything about it. Chooses not to speak to them in any kind of meaningful way. I mean, we can create meaning. We can interpret things as being, from God. But that's us wanting God to be talking to us. That's us, thinking that God is telling us something through natural occurrences that happen in our life. Can't tell you the amount of times when I thought that random thoughts that pop up in my head were God talking to me. Right? We're telling me, oh, that's bad, or you should feel bad about that, even though I already felt bad about that. But it's like God was taking that knife and like fucking twisting it in my back so that it hurt even more. You know, like what purpose is there to that?
Well, the purpose to that is, John, that God didn't want to create robots which would just make what is right. He made humans with free will, which could make free choices. And that, of course, englobes risks that we not do all the time what is right. But in order to have humans which can love and which can be free to actually do what is right and choose what is right and choose what is wrong, you need to permit them to make free choices. And that's what happens. There are many people which use their free will to make bad decisions, and God permits to happen.
Now, I can get behind that. I really can. But the problem that I have is that, like, with my son, I can allow him to make free will choices, right? And he can deal with the consequences of those choices. But if he comes to me crying, upset, feeling like suicide is the only option here, I'm not going to be silent. I'm not going to just sit by and watch it. You tell me that, if you truly seek God, then he will reveal himself to you. And that
Correct.
simply did not happen to me, nor does it happen to the millions or the thousands of people a year that die from suicide. Okay? God doesn't reveal himself to them. God doesn't say shit. He doesn't do shit. He doesn't have to force a position on anybody. He just has to be like, hey, bro, can pat you on the back and you're fine.
John, I can actually talk in regards of this issue from personal experience, because when I was a teenager, I had a depression, and I made 2 suicide attempts. But I tried to find a way out of my depression, and I tried many ways, and I had no one which I could talk about my situation, because I didn't even know that what I had was depression, and nobody understood what I had. So I had to carry it by myself, and it was more than 6 months, maybe, or even more than that I was seeking a solution to understand what was going on with me, and I didn't know a way out. And I started to remember that when I was a child, I was my mother, she is Catholic. She was making these prayers, these Catholic prayers, and that was a good phase in my life as a child. And then I said, well, if there is a God, I will start to pray and see if that maybe helps. And it did help. And it wasn't not in an instant, but slowly I came out of my depression, and I started to deepen my curiosity in understanding who God was. And then one day someone invited me to go to an evangelical church, and there I accepted the Lord as my Savior. And that is 36 years ago. And in that time period, my faith has only grown. And today I'm in a position that I can say to you, I know that my God exists. I cannot prove it to anyone else, but I know inside of me that the God which I believe in, he exists. There is no doubt whatsoever in regards of that.
So, how would you consider the Christians that commit suicide? Do you consider them not real Christians? Were they not really seeking Christ or seeking God? Do you think they were fake Christians? How do you consider Christians that commit suicide?
I don't know, John. I think this is something that is one case individual to another, and there are reasons which I cannot judge, so I cannot answer your question.
Well, no, I mean, if you say that if you truly seek God, then he will reveal himself to you, and these people that seek God, that truly believe in God, and they still commit suicide, what does that mean for your position? Like, the fact that Christians do commit suicide is very detrimental to the entire position that you just laid out.
But first of all, even if we convert ourselves to Christ and become Christians, that doesn't mean that we are weak in the flesh and that we stop simply to sin. That doesn't happen. We keep still failing, falling, and move on and then fail again. We keep being sinners, even if we convert to Christ. And I think there is that explains what you are questioning. So we don't believe that Christians, simply because they convert, they simply become non-sinners and they don't fail anymore. That simply is not true. We keep failing, but nonetheless we keep going on and trust in the Lord that He is with us and helps us in our daily life.
Yeah. Would you say that exact same thing to kids that are being sexually assaulted by priests?
Well, this is a very difficult topic, and I mean, what you should be more specific in your point. I mean, a priest which rapes a child, in my understanding, is not a true believer in God. Is not a Christian. You know,
that's just a true Scotsman fallacy, though.
But I don't know what that fallacy is. So
I mean, there was a Catholic priest that basically used one of those communion crackers and blessed the genitals of the child he was about to rape. And I mean, he was a complete. I mean, you can say that he wasn't a Christian all you want to, but he definitely was a Christian, right? He was still a Christian, and
I don't
regardless, so. but regardless of whether or not he was a Christian, God still watched it happen. I mean, answer me honestly there, Otangelo. Could you seriously stand by when you had like endless amount of power to stop something from happening? Would you allow a small child to be raped?
Well, the thing is, John, if you start with
answer the question.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer. If you start trying to stop one evil behavior, then you have consequently to stop all evil behaviors. And basically, you are becoming a dictator which will not permit anything wrong to happen. And then you kill free will, because then you cannot have free agents which choose between wrong and right. And then you cannot have love. And God didn't want to make robots. He wants to make free beings with free will, which could choose between doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing. So
now, you see, I totally disregard this, because if some guy was coming up to my child to harm him in whatever kind of way, I would definitely punch the fuck out of him until he probably needed a feeding tube, right? And that does not in any way affect the free will of my child or even him. He had the free will to choose to do it. And then I had the free will, just as God has free will, unless God doesn't have free will. Does God have free will?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, God has free will. So if God materialized, punched the fuck out of the priest that was about to rape a child, I don't see that as violating any kind of free will. Where is the violation of free will in that?
Well, I think that God will judge all the world, and He will judge each of us. But He will do it.
I disagree with that.
Time.
Well, see, I disagree with that, because God doesn't actually judge people based on their moral actions. He just simply doesn't.
We will see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Basically, when you get to heaven, how is God going to judge me?
In righteousness, in justice, in correctness, based on the information that He has of your entire life, because He actually watches every one of us and He knows everything. He knows each word that we talked, each thoughts that we had, each action that we did. He knows basically everything, and then based on that, He will judge us.
All right. So would you agree with the statement of Christians can still go to hell?
No.
All right. So if Christians can't go to hell, then that means that the only thing that we are judged with is whether or not we believe in Jesus when we get to heaven. We're not judged on righteousness. We're not judged on how good we were in this life. We're not judged on our actions, right? We're only judged by whether or not We believe that Jesus is the only way into heaven, and whether or not we have asked Jesus to forgive us of our sins.
Well, I think that there will be also a judgment of those which are saved and those that lived in correctness and did more things for the cause of Christ, and they will have a better reward than those which didn't basically nothing. They can be saved, but will find no reward in heaven. And that is written in the New Testament, that there will be different kind of judgments. Judgments for those which belong to Christ and those which do not belong to Christ. Okay. And I think there will be differences between, I mean, if someone lived like a jerk and didn't do absolutely nothing, but in the end he believed in Christ and was a Christian, then may he be saved, but will have no reward. But someone which lived a holy life and did many good things for the kingdom, that person may find more crowns and more reward in heaven. So there will be distinctions.
Well, but does that mean they'll go to hell?
No, someone that belongs to Christ and belongs to his body will not go to hell.
Okay, let me ask you this clarifying question. If a Christian rapes a young child, but then repents of it, does he go to heaven?
That's between him and God. I'm not a judge to say what is the right decision in regards of these things.
So I mean, yeah, I'm not going to let you hide behind that. If he rapes a young child and then sincerely repents, let's say he sincerely repents and he never does it again his entire life, right? But still, he's raped that child. That child is psychologically damaged, right? That child has had their lives changed, right, because of the incident. Does that person that raped that child, even if he repents, get to go to heaven?
Okay, this is something which I cannot answer to you. I don't know.
No, you just don't want to answer in the affirmative. That's the problem. You don't want to say that a rapist will go to hell or go to heaven.
Okay, listen. The Bible says that someone that truly converts to Christ will change his life. The consequence of a true conversion is that we will start to change our trajectory and start to want to do what Christ wants us to do. And that is to purify ourselves and to become more holy and to do his will. Now, right. I am not omnipotent and all-knowing in order to judge someone that eventually does this and say, oh, that is something that he must go to hell. That I'm not entitled to judge in regards of that.
All right. So if somebody raped your relative, would you want to see them at the same resort that you were also at for eternity? Just asking.
Well, you're asking difficult questions which I cannot answer. That's the truth.
Yes, I am asking difficult questions, but I am going to have to wrap up my portion of this, which I do have some questions from my Skeptic Mafia, and there's also some super chats. So do you mind answering a few questions from the crowd?
If I can answer them, no problem.
Okay, awesome. I know that I've grilled you a little intensely here tonight. I really appreciate you being here and answering these questions the best you can. So Terrence Clark, he sent a super chat. We're going to do super chats, and then we're going to do the Skeptic Mafia comments that were left earlier. Terrence Clark said that biochemists have already addressed homochirality, and there's no reason the nucleotides need to be those specific 20. So I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Well, let's suppose that there would not be 20, but another number. Then you would have to change the tRNAs, the amino acid tRNA synthetases. You would have to change the genetic code. You would have to change the whole system entirely. So how that could happen, and a transitional a transition from another amino acid set to a different one, that would require that you change the whole system. And I don't know how, from an engineering perspective, that could happen.
So, from an engineering perspective, do things not get more complex?
What do you mean?
Well, like take, of course, I'm coming from a software background. Take Microsoft Word, for example. Wouldn't you say that Microsoft Word now is vastly more complex than Microsoft Word back when it was first invented?
Well, we are talking here about the information. Of course, once you have a language, you can add more information, then you eventually have more complex things. But we are talking about the language and the translation mechanism. And if you change the number of amino acids, then you need to change the genetic code. You need to change the whole system, the tRNAs. You need to change, as I said before, there are several things which have to work together. And if you change just the set of amino acids, you need to change the whole thing altogether. And I don't know how that could have happened unless there would have been an intelligence directing it.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not an expert in that particular field, so I can't really speak to it, but it just seems like one change, regardless of how big it is, could have happened naturally, especially when concerning abiogenesis and evolution in general. So, like, for instance, one big change is the difference between land quadrupeds and whales, who often are quoted on this channel as having a 15-foot dick. They do not, though. They do not have one.
10.
It's 10, by the way. It's a 10-foot dick. Everybody spam Kent Hovind about that.
Make sure he knows it's a 10-foot penis.
Make sure he knows it's 10. I think my wife's a little drunk. It's the first time in a long time that she's been that way. So, all right. So you ready for the next one?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Maya Asburn says, "Thank you, Godless, for exposing Otangelo's flawed thinking." I don't know if I've exactly done that here tonight, but I really do appreciate the conversation there, Otangelo. Michael Thole says, "Is a Christian willing to advance their beliefs based on reliable new evidence?"
Absolutely.
I think you'd be hard pressed to actually prove that with evidence, though, because I mean, as far as Christians advancing their beliefs, they're normally forced to advance their beliefs because of social change, is generally what I've seen.
I don't know. I mean, I certainly wouldn't change my belief because of social pressure. I mean, I'm actually challenged on a daily basis by people which do not hold my beliefs, and I keep them nonetheless. So that is a no.
I think there's a difference between the micro and the macro here, because I feel like what you're talking about is micro, being that your friends are having these different opinions, whereas on the macro being like society changes. Like, for instance, with the slavery in 1865, I mean, even people that were for slavery still thought that black people were inherently lower on the totem pole than they were, because they were black and they were white. So, I mean, they were still racist, even though they didn't think that they should be slaves anymore, right? So on the macro level, society has changed in that respect, where we don't necessarily think of black people as slaves, but we're still racist as fuck against them, right? I mean, I'm not racist against black. That's never been something that's resonated with me, like, ever. I'm just saying that that's been one aspect of society that has, on the macro, changed over time, to where now it's abhorrent to think that slavery is okay, and we're actually very vehemently against that. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, my wife is black, so if I would be a racist, then of course I wouldn't have married a black woman, you know. But
Well, I mean, I
this is
wasn't necessarily trying to insinuate that you are racist. I was just giving an example of how, on the macro, society has sort of reshaped religion. Because wouldn't you agree that prior to 1865 and even after that point, you have preachers and Christians that considered slavery, regardless of the black-white divide, they would consider slavery to be biblical?
well, of course, this is a hard topic which always comes up by atheists, which accuse the Bible of promoting slavery or of not being sufficiently against it. But I think this is a topic which is very extensive. We would have to go into seeing the societies in the Old Testament, the Jews, and so forth. To be honest with you, John, I am not so versed in giving answers in regards of that topic. Okay.
Well, I understand that. I wasn't necessarily talking about I wasn't talking about what Christianity really says. I was really just talking about what people considered to be like theological at the time.
Well, I think that Christianity has, and the New Testament in special, has shaped society to the better. And that starts from the principle of the first commandment in the Bible, which is to love our next as ourselves. And that has shaped Western society in many aspects to the positive. And that has shaped science, freedom, liberty, hospitals, which emerged through the Christianity, and so forth. I have a whole list in regards of that. And that starts from the principle that humans should treat one another with love and respect.
Well, that actually doesn't come from the Bible. That actually comes from prior to the Bible, even prior to the Septuagint or the Torah or the Jewish Bible, whatever you want to consider as far as Abrahamic religion goes. That actually originates way before that. So that's actually not because of Christianity or Judaism or anything like that. But I appreciate you answering the question there. But would you not agree that prior to 1865, there would be Christians that thought that slavery was biblical?
It can be.
Well, no, I mean it's certain because slavery was the norm prior to 1865, at least in the context of America and the slave trade in general. I think prior to that point, slavery was seen as something that was normal, right? And that also means that in Christianity, it would have been normal. You even have preachers that you can cite that show that they were using the Bible against the idea that slaves shouldn't be a thing. There's famously a Bible out there called the Slave Bible, where they take away all of the entire idea of being freed as a slave, and that's what they preach from. So, I mean, to say that you're unsure or you don't know is, I don't know. It just seems a little fucky to me, you know?
But as I said, I have not studied this issue in depth, so I cannot give you detailed answers in this regards. What I know is that it was by Christians which promoted the abolition of slavery back then. Now, I don't know the details, so I have articles on that too in my library. I can even provide them afterwards in the link or to you, and you can have a read of those.
Right. I would definitely love those. But, I mean, you would have to also agree that Christians were also using the Bible to promote slavery, right?
Yes, that's possible.
No. That is definitely what happened. It's not just possible. It's definitely what happened.
Okay, John, as I told you, I have not studied the topic to give you sure answers to that.
Okay. That's fine. Sorry, I just that's one particular topic on my channel that I go through regularly. So, yeah, that's the reason why I harped on that a little bit. Next, we have Terrence Clark with another super chat who says, "Don't give probabilities or reason why it seems unlikely. Tell us what the actual barrier is." I know that this is regarding like abiogenesis and stuff like that. So sorry, I have to do this really quick because I know it's probably about time for his bed. But Daniel M says that David says hi, and I just gotta say hi, David. I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you have a good night's sleep, buddy. So yeah, sorry, you go right on ahead. Talking about the barrier, not talking about probabilities and abiogenesis.
What he's asking is what would be the smallest organism to be alive. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you can answer that particular version of it. Maybe I don't know if Terrence is still watching, but Terrence, if you can give us a bit more of a clarification on your super chat, then I can inform you here in a little bit. But if you want to go ahead and answer as far as like first organism or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it is frequently said that the smallest organism would be Mycoplasma, which has about 500,000 nucleotides. But I would say this is not the smallest organism because it is a pathogen which requires a host to live and to get its nutrition, which also has to be alive. So a free living, a self-replicating bacteria, which we can consider as the barrier, as the smallest organism would be, for example, I forgot the name now. It's Pelagibacter rubique, something like that. It has about 1.3 million nucleotides, about 1,300 proteins, and that's it. That's about the size.
Okay, if Terrence comes back, then we can address that a little bit further whenever he gives some clarification. The next super chat is Dave Lee, who says Casey's laugh is my favorite part of this conversation. She definitely has an infectious laugh, that's for sure. Then we got Uhan Roderick, the priest of the magical squirrel, who says, I saw the squirrel outside today. Checkmate.
Okay, great. Congratulations.
and then Uhan says, I used the squirrel in 2 exorcisms today. Next. Okay.
Show it to me. Maybe I change my mind.
And then next we have Sir Pika Pup the Benevolent that says just one name, Jim Jones. So how do you explain like cults that use Christianity as their basis for building their cult? And how does that differ from Christianity on the whole as far as how it developed?
Well, it demonstrates how depraved that the humankind is. So that's all what it says about it. I mean, the fact that it uses Christianity says nothing about Christianity itself.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, God flooded the entire earth, killed billions of people just because he was pissed off or something. And then he raped a 14-year-old sometime later. And then there's a whole bunch of different shit in between that we could get into. Or everybody could watch our daily Bible podcast that airs every Tuesday, just about every Tuesday.
We'll do one this.
It kind of seems like God's a bit maniacal. And he's pretty horrible.
He's fucked up.
Yes, honey. We think that God is fucked up. So, sorry, Otangelo. But yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot of problems with God's actions in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. I understand that you don't exactly have the same problems. I know that you think that God's perfect. And so he probably had a really good reason to kill everybody on earth. including small women and children. So I mean, we can just leave it as to what you said, if you want to. I don't know if you want to say anything else.
No.
No. Okay. Uhan Roderick said, I am so getting the Book of the Scroll together. I will definitely buy that, Uhan. Jane Pusecker had a quick comment in the chat saying, okay, here it is, Otangelo, you say believing in God is a choice. Then how do you explain parents who raise kids with religious belief? Doesn't that take away choice?
Well, I was raised Catholic, and I went frequently with my parents to the Catholic Church. But when I was a teenager, I changed my faith. I renounced of Catholicism and became an evangelical Christian. And I had serious problems at home. My parents, they wanted me to leave home because of my choice of leaving Catholicism, and it was very difficult. So I think that the fact that we are raised in a certain religion doesn't mean necessarily that we will remain for our entire life in that religion. We are people that can think and make up our minds and have the ability to make choices also in regards of that.
Okay. Let's see. Brian Stevens says, I'll pay someone to act out the squirrel healing. QED. Uhan says the squirrel fulfilled those prophecies. Next. Yeah, I don't know if you want to respond to any of that. I'm definitely making a squirrel.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Uhan, we need to get started on making a squirrel shirt now, because that is going to be a thing from now on. The magical squirrel and his nut.
It has to be albino.
The albino Satan, honey.
It has to be albino.
There's an albino Satan squirrel. Uhan says he's already on it. So great. The Jim Tanker says, hey, I made it. Oh, it's Otangelo. And then he's got a whale dick emoji. And then there's Wacko in Seattle just sent a super chat of $1. Thank you so much there, Wacko. And then let's see, we do have a couple. We have a few comments from the Skeptic Mafia from the community post that I posted. Okay, the Rune Warrior wants to know if you're homophobic.
No.
No?
No, I'm not homophobic.
Okay. My wife wants to know if you think it's okay for gays to marry.
Yes.
Yes, he thinks it's okay for gays to marry.
Wonderful.
Just let me clarify. It doesn't mean that I don't think it is wrong to have a homosexual relationship, but I think they should have also their civil rights.
Okay. I mean, I think that's now. Granted, I'm 2 drinks in at this point, but I think that's a pretty good position comparatively to, like, I would say most Christians out there. Then we got Will Prince of Fretch. He says, I think I'll take Thumper's advice for once and keep the snark to myself. Let's see. Vanta Blue says he has read. Has he read any other religious texts other than the Bible?
No, I have not.
Oh, no, you haven't?
No.
Do you think that you would be open to reading other religious texts?
No, I would think that is a waste of time for me, because I'm settled with the Bible.
Okay. And then Chrismer has an ASCII that's just a sad face. It's an NPC. Sorry, it's an NPC. And he says, he insists on being an NPC. So, I'm not sure if you understand that there, Otangelo.
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, NPC is a non-playable character, but yeah. Let's see. let's see. Krismer actually had a question, though. He says, the standard creationist explanation for the distribution of fossils is geological strata, the most primitive life forms in the lower strata, and mammals and humans in the upper strata. Is that clever mankind was smart enough to climb higher ground to escape the rising floodwaters? How do you explain the fact that thousands of persons drowned in the recent Central American floods in an area contiguous to higher ground? How do you explain the position of the fossils in the geological layers with fossils below large fossils, with small fossils below large fossils, which is contrary to hydraulic sorting, in which large objects settle deeper than small objects? So basically, if there was a worldwide flood, then the larger things would have sunk first because, of course, they were heavier, and thus would be at the lower part of the strata instead of the larger things being at the upper end of the strata, and the smaller things being at the lower end of the strata. Does that make sense?
I think that it is scrambled up. It's not like so nicely gradative as your super chat person said. I think it is just mixed. I am not so sure about that, but I cannot imagine that it is so gradative as he claims it is.
Okay. Michael W. Roble says, ask him, is your obsession with trying to prove evolution wrong based on a deeply rooted suppressed belief that it is true? And your obsession with the watchmaker, what is your obsession with the watchmaker argument?
Well, it is not that this is an obsession, but I think the watchmaker argument has never been disproved. The more modern version is the one brought up by Hoyle, and the jumbo jet forming by a tornado going over a junkyard is a nice exemplification, actually, in regards of abiogenesis, not in regards of evolution. And we see, and I bring always up the factory maker argument, because cells are lit in a literal sense, also in the scientific literature, described as factories, which make all the chemical compounds, and they are made by molecular machines, which are proteins, and these have to be joined together in the right manner, in the right order. They need metabolic networks, which the proteins, they need to be joined and in the right order in order to make these compounds. And that is a nice exemplification of a watch, where each piece of the watch also has to be in the right place. And such things, they simply do not come up by chance. They are designed, they are projected. Now, in regards of evolution, it has to be made a distinction what is meant by evolution. I think adaptation, which is often also called microevolution, that is a fact, and it is life essential. That means life had to be able, right from the beginning, to adapt to the environment, and that is a pre-programmed process. Now, in regards of macroevolution, which is the diversification of all life forms from a common ancestor, that is what creation is in general, and I disagree with that proposition. And there is good evidence that organisms, they are not just built by the genetic information, but in special and mainly by epigenetic information and signaling networks, which have to be designed.
Okay. I would really love to counter anything that you said, but I honestly can't remember where you started. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you for responding to his question, though.
Okay.
This is an interesting one. This one comes from Alex Baranowski, and I thank you so much, Alex, for your question here. How do you go from an argument for a generic creator, being that like intelligent design, to the Christian God? Like, how do you connect those two particular things?
It is a cumulative argument for the God of the Bible, and I have an article in my library, reasoneandscience.catboard.com, and I can link it afterwards, and he can look it up. But there are several lines of reasoning which, in the end, bring us to the God of the Bible, and in special to the Christian God.
Okay, so basically, the Bible says, would that be like a pretty good, maybe not necessarily the Bible says, but the Bible is the reason, is the big divide there between generic intelligent designer and God?
Now, I would say that the Kalam cosmological argument as well points specifically to the God of the Bible, and I have at my channel also a video on this topic.
Yes, which if you're not, in case you're not like watching the video or anything like that, you just got to search up Intelligent Design Academy, which I'm so sorry, Otangelo, I didn't have Intelligent Design Academy linked in the description, but I will definitely get it linked as soon as I can, okay?
Okay.
So Terrence Clark asks, I'd ask if he feels his strategy of burying people in copy-paste text walls is effective evangelism. So basically what he's asking is, do you think that piling on all of these like different claims against evolution and atheism, I guess, and everything like that, like just laying it all out all at once is like effective at converting people to Jesus or Christianity?
Okay, first of all, it is never my purpose or goal to convert anyone. Okay, what I am doing is basically I am following Christ's command to go and preach the gospel. Now, that means not necessarily only to preach the gospel. And as the Apostle Paul said, to the Greek, I will be like a Greek. To a Jew, I will be like a Jew, and so forth. So to communicate with atheists, many atheists, they know the gospel already, and many, they come already from a Christian background. So many also, they are Christians, then they go to high school, they go to university, and they are not prepared to, and they are confronted with evolutionary thinking and with all that kind of arguments, and they are suddenly and eventually leaving their faith and becoming unbelievers because of all these arguments which are being provided by philosophical naturalism and materialism. So my language is adapted to reach out to atheists, but what they do with my information, that is not my business. They can do whatever they want. Now, why do I use copy pasting? First of all, for example, when I call into a call-in show, there are hundreds and hundreds of people which are asking me things, and if I would write down each answer to all these inquiries, I would spend 24 hours a day just to answer. And to many of these inquiries, I have already in my library the questions prepared. So either I don't respond them at all, or I respond them with copy pasting, which is at the same time the best answer which I can come up with because it was investigated previously. So if someone is upset because I don't give a personal answer, I'm sorry for that, but I'm only one person, so I cannot satisfy everyone as they want.
Okay. We've got Speed of Sound of Gravity, which I think that you've talked to recently. He would like for you to explain why you find it impossible to believe in evolution and an old Earth and still be a Christian.
Okay, no answer to that person. Next.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Metalhead says, I have listened to Otangelo do his bit on about every show, and hit everyone with fairly much the same spew every time. It is always reworded the same. I want to know what his background is in religion and biblical studies. Is he self-taught or just a pew puppet, someone who only learns from the pew by what others have fed them?
Well, I am a Christian for 36 years, and I am graduated in machine design. I'm a machine designer. So my specialty is not theology or something like that. And whatever I know in regards of the Bible, that is that I have learned by myself by reading the literature.
Okay. Uhan says that he's got nothing, but obviously he had some stuff to add to the conversation, being the magical squirrel with his nut. And then we get Cadence, who says, I was literally in an open mic chat with Otangelo and on MathPeg's channel with the ability to ask him anything I wanted, and I chose to ignore him instead. The only reason he's relevant is because he's fucking everywhere right now, and he has nothing to add, and his arguments are worn out already. So I'm just kind of curious, what do you think about like a dismissal of your arguments that you have been known to give?
Everyone is free to react as they want, so that's it.
Okay. Drew's book review says, "Brave man. I'll look forward to watching. I don't have any questions for him." So thank you, Drew, for leaving a comment. Grifter's Deuce says, or asks rather, does your religion require you to be so belligerently evangelical? Is it a specific Bible verse that requires you to try and convert everyone you encounter, or is it just a personal choice? If it is a choice, why?
Well, as I said, my goal is not to try to convert people. What I provide is just what I believe, and what you guys do with my information, that's up to you.
Okay. Daniel M. says, what religion are you? Do you believe the other religions are going to hell because they don't believe the correct way? And I think by religion, what he's talking about is the different denominations of Christianity. Like, there's a lot of different denominations in Christianity. How do you know you have the right interpretation of Christianity?
Well, I think there are some wonderful Catholics and people of other denominations out there, which I have a great approach, and I like them, and they truly love Christ. Now, I am not God to make a definition who will be saved and who will not be saved. If someone believes in an old earth, in a young earth, or if someone is an Adventist or whatever, I am not God to judge other people, so I cannot give an answer to that.
Okay. Do you think that versions of Christianity are wrong?
Yes, of course. There are many sects out there which distort the Bible in a way which simply contradicts the core beliefs of the Christian faith, and of course they are wrong.
Okay. Jonathan Hanachek asks, why did you decide to believe in Christ?
I think I gave a little bit an explanation in regards of that. It wasn't just from one day to another. It was a process. I was raised as a Catholic, and then in my teenage years, I did read a book which was about salvation, about the plan of salvation, and it sounded very strange to me because I thought as a good Catholic I had to do good deeds, to do good works to be saved, and then I was confronted with the gospel, which was new and different to me, and I had to assimilate the concept that we required to believe in Christ's sacrifice on the cross. It took some time, and then I was studying the Bible, and that was a process. So it didn't simply happen from one day to another, but it was a process.
Okay. And another super chat that just came in was Uhan Roderick, who's got the age-old question in our community here. That's Star Trek or Star Wars, which side do you fall on?
No idea. I've never thought about that.
Oh, wow. Have you seen either?
I think in my childhood I've seen Star Trek and Star Wars as well, but it's a long time since then.
Well, you know, Star Wars has a lot of magic going on in it, so you might like it.
Okay.
Jane Pusecker in the comments now, that was all the Skeptic Mafia stuff, but we get Jane Pusecker who says, who asked a very good question, really quick if you got time. can you at least entertain the idea that God could have had a hand in the process of evolution? Like, if evolution happened, do you think that God had a hand in allowing it or causing it to happen?
Well, as I explained before, evolution in the sense of adaptation is a life necessary process which had to be pre-programmed right from the beginning in order for organisms to be able to adapt to the environment. And there is a range of speciation which we see happens, but that is I would describe it as a secondary speciation, where there is also of a split of populations which cannot interbreed with each other. But what is the dispute here is primary speciation, that is the large changes from organisms becoming more complex and acquiring ears and legs and ears and eyes and all these complex features. And to claim that these features emerged by evolutionary mechanisms, by slow evolutionary processes, by mutations and natural selection, this is something that I don't see it to be true based on what I have studied on molecular biology.
Okay. And then one final question, and this is where I'm cutting it off at. But Jim Majors, he asks, if not for attempting to convert others to Christianity, what is the intended purpose of your apologetics?
It is to be light in a world which dwells in darkness. I am fulfilling Christ's commandment to go and to preach to the gospel to everyone that is possible, but I leave it to those which listen to believe or not to believe and to reject what we are saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate you joining me tonight there, Otangelo. Do you want to take a minute and I guess shill out your channel, tell people where they can find you and everything like that if they want to learn more?
Okay, if you can, after our chat, put it in the description, I can give you the links. I have a library, which is reasonandscience.catsport.com, where I put all my investigations and people can look it up. And I have 2 channels on YouTube. One is The God Talk, where I have live chats. And the second one is Intelligent Design Academy, where I make some videos in regards of intelligent design.
Okay, and let's see, I'm getting that in the description right now because I know after we get off, I get to call my son and then I'm probably going to drink some more. But I've got your link in the description in case anybody wants to go and listen to more of what you got going on there. So, again, Otangelo, I appreciate you coming on tonight to discuss these things with me. I know that it was kind of a lot to discuss. It wasn't so focused. So I really appreciate you coming on and discussing a wide range of topics. And I do have to say that the only reason why I decided to have you on was because you kind of distanced yourself from Smokey, because he's kind of a misogynist. I know that's one thing that I said in my last stream last Friday was that you were one, but that was because it kind of seemed like you were it seemed like you were compliant with Smokey and his misogyny. And so I do want to take the time out to say that we were wrong about that. As I understand it, conversations happened behind the scene where you were very disgruntled with how Smokey acted. And so that is the primary reason why I'm having you on here, is because, living up to at least some semblance of a moral standard, at least against the kind of standard that Smokey has. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on here, and I hope that you have a great night, man.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me at your channel. Whenever you want again, I'm at your disposition. If you want to show up at my channel one or the other day to have a talk like we had tonight, you are appreciated. You can come, and whatever questions that come up, I will be trying to respond to those questions in my best capability. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, again, I appreciate the offer and the invitation, and I guess we're going to go to the end card thing right now. And everybody, I hope you have a great weekend. We're probably going to have a call-in show tomorrow, and so I will see you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up, use your voice, and I'll see you guys later. Don't forget. Wait, shit! I've already said that. Sorry.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.